Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to talk about functions in Python. We're going to talk about keyword arguments, and we're going to talk about local and global variables. So let's get started. Let's talk about local and global variables. So when we write code, we have variables that can be used by just a function, or we have variables that can be used by everything. So the difference is when you write a global and local variable is global variables are written above all the other functions. They're outside of every code block. They're by itself. Versus local variables, which are part of the function. An example would be like this. See, this is my phone, which means it belongs to me, a function. And this would be a local variable. But if everyone could use this phone, then it would be a global variable, which means it would sit outside of myself and sit somewhere else. It would be used by anyone. So again, local variables are for the function only, belongs to the function, and global variables can be used by all functions and the rest of the program. Let's take a look. So when creating a function, why don't we begin with the simplest thing? To write a function, you begin with the defining name. So we say def to define our function, and we're going to give it a name. So in this function, we're going to make it say hello. So we'll call it say hello. We'll put the parentheses here, and we'll put a colon. So that lets us know immediately that we have a function called say hello. Now, what we're going to do now is hit the enter key, and you notice that it's tabbed already because we're going to write blocks of code that go in our function. We've talked about this using the if statement lesson where we talked about blocks of code. If you don't remember what that is, go back and watch that video on if statements and then come back. So in our say hello function, we're going to ask the user for their name, and it'll be an input, and we'll just say, what is your name? We're going to print hello followed by their username, and then we're going to use this keyword called return. It's going to return the value, and I'm going to hit save. If you currently ran this, it won't do anything. It'll just wait for you to activate it, which is important to understand that when we have a function, you have to call it. And how we call a function is just by invoking the name of the function, followed by the parentheses. So if I hit save and I hit run, it's going to ask me what my name is. I hit enter, and then finally we ran our function that says hello Howard. Now you might be wondering to yourself, why bother with this? Why bother writing a function when I can just write this outside the function? So the importance of writing a function is that you have linear code, meaning you run it from top to bottom. You run it as every line that you've written. Well, as a function, it's compartmentalized, meaning you don't have to run it until you call upon it. And I think that's the most important part. That's the biggest thing you have to understand about functions is that they don't run until you call them. And functions can be incredibly complicated. So you don't want to run all of that data, all of that code at once. You want to wait until you call on it first, and then you can run it. Saves a lot of time. Let's now talk about function arguments. So functions can accept arguments that pass back to a function. And if a function doesn't receive an expected argument back, you're going to get an error. So I'm going to erase this. And what we're going to do now is we're going to build a sample to illustrate how we pass names as arguments, okay? Why don't we rewrite our say hello function again? We'll say hello, and it's a function, except this time in the parentheses, I'm going to pass an argument, and the name of this argument is going to be called x. We would say print hello, comma, and then followed by the x, all right? And then we're going to return. Now, when we call the function, we're going to say hello as we normally do. You'd call the function by its name. But inside these parentheses is what we're passing as x. What are we going to pass as the argument itself? And I'm just going to write my name in here. And if I save it and I run it, it'll just say hello Howard, right? So this right here, this Howard, has passed as the argument x. Okay? So that's how we pass an argument. When we invoke the function, we replace x with what will pass into the function. And in fact, in this, we can pass multiple arguments. Let's do an x and a y. And then we come back and we modify this. We'll say hello x, and then comma, quotes, and we'll say you like, another comma, and then the y. All right. Now, in our say hello, we're going to pass multiple arguments. So the first argument as x would be Howard, and the second argument will say pancakes. So if I say this and I run it, it says, hello Howard, you like pancakes right here. It is because we've passed in two arguments. We passed in x, we passed in y. You can pass in multiple arguments. It doesn't have to be just two. So here's a challenge I have for you. I would like you to build a function using arguments to find the volume of a rectangle. Okay? If you don't know how to find the volume of a rectangle, we can do length times width times height, and it should give you your values. All right? Why don't you code that now, hit pause, do your best, and then when we come back, we'll code it together. Welcome back. So by now, you should have done your sample, and if not, it's all right. Why don't we code it together? If you got lost, let's do it together. So I'm going to create a function called rectangle volume, and I'm going to pass my three arguments of length, of width, and of height. All right, three arguments to pass. Then I'm going to create a local variable called vol for volume, which is just basically going to be length multiplied by the width multiplied by the height. I am then going to print the volume, and I'm going to hit the return key. Then when I call the function, we say rect volume, and I give it my three parameters. So in this one, I'll just do 30 by 40 by 10. I'm going to hit save. Let's run it. Let me clear the screen out so we can get a better view. There we go. And let's hit run. And I received 12,000. You should have gotten the same values too. And you can cross-check it with online calculators if you want to make sure that our answers are correct. Now we're going to learn about keyword function arguments. So previously we've learned about how you can pass x and y into the argument of the function. But now we're going to learn to assign those to something that you want rather than just putting it in the function name. You could say, you know, this equals that, which is what we're going to learn about right now. In keyword argument function coding, it's pretty similar, right? So we have a function. We define a function of, let's create a function of two persons. We'll go name one and then name two. And then what we'll do is we'll print a greeting for the first one. So we'll say, hello, name one. And then we'll print a second one. It says, aloha, name two. And we're going to return it. So when we call this function, we're basically going to be doing the same thing. We're going to call the function. Now, here's the different part. We're going to do some assignment. We're going to say that name one is going to equal a name. We'll call this one Bao. She was a senior in one of my classes, and we'll name another senior in one of my classes. Name two equals Ariana. Okay, we have two names. And when we run this, we have value. Hello Bao and aloha Ariana. And that's fine. So it's another way of writing your function arguments by keyword. So why don't we now talk about why the return statement is so important. Now, we've used return statement in functions, and why we did that is to make things a little more portable. And here's what I mean by that. So I found this example online, and I think this is a good example to understand how things work. So why don't we build a calculator that will calculate your age in dog years. So we'll say calc dog years. And the value we're going to pass, the argument we're going to pass into it is human years. Okay? Now, we're going to have a local variable called dog, and it's going to equal human years multiplied by 7, because that's generally what some people think a dog year is equal to 7 human years. And we're going to return. But instead of just saying return, we're going to return dog. Okay? All right. Now, let's make another global variable called woof. It's going to equal calc dog years. I'm going to pass a value. So I'm 100. So the output should be 700. Now we did it this way. We assigned a function with an argument to a variable. You can do that too to make it a little more portable. So when we finally print this variable, we should have an output result. There you go, 700. So the function does its job. It passes in the argument, and then we assign the function with an argument to a variable, and we just call that variable forward if we wanted to. There's so many ways you could do this, and that's just one way to do it. You've learned about Python functions, you've learned about arguments, and you've learned how to use functions and when to use functions is the most important part. You learn how to assign arguments to your function as well using different methods. So if you have comments, go ahead and leave them. I'll read them and I'll answer them as best I can. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel already, if you could do so, that'd be great. Until then, I'll see you later. Bye.